Vice President and our Chair of the Capital and Commodity Markets Committee. We make a good beginning to this good beginning to this program. And I can actually feel the winds really blowing hard behind me in the window. I think the weather is only becoming a little more pleasant after some few days of heat. So I would like to welcome all of you this evening on this very important webinar on the ETFs, as we like to call it. It's a virtual knowledge session on exchange traded funds, popularly known as ETFs, the rising paradigm for investors. So a warm welcome to Shri Pradeep Multani, Senior Vice President, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So thank you very much for taking out time to be with us on this evening and motivate us for all such programs where you actually have your kind presence. My thanks to Mr. Vijay Bhushan, the Chair of the Capital and the Commodity Markets, for leading this program and making this happen. My hearty thanks to Mr. Hemant Bhatia, Deputy Head ETF Business from Nippon Life India AMC, to Mr. Samir Desai, National Head ETF Sales, Nippon Life India AMC, Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, Vice President and Head North NSE Limited, and of course to Mr. Brijesh Sharma and Mr. Samir Desai. Thank you very much for joining us. And we look forward to a very interesting learning session on ETFs. So I think less than 5 seconds back, we had 50 people. We have 58 now. So more and more joining us. And at this point of time, let me invite most humbly our Senior Vice President, Mr. Pradeep Multani, to give his presidential and welcome remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Vivek. Good evening to all. Welcome to the virtual knowledge session on exchange traded funds, ETFs, rising paradigm for investors. On behalf of PhD, I would like to welcome our panelists of the session, Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, Mr. Samir Desai, Mr. Hemant Bhatia, Mr. Brijesh Sharma. I would also like to welcome Mr. Vijay Bhushan, Chair, Capital and Commodity Market Committee, and today's session moderator, Mr. Vivek Sehgal, Assistant Secretary General, PhD CCI. Ladies and gentlemen, PhD CCI has been working as a catalyst for the promotion of Indian industry, trade, and entrepreneurship for the past 116 years. It is a forward-looking, proactive, and dynamic pan-India apex organization. As a partner in progress with industry and government, PhD Chamber, with a special focus on MSMEs, works at the grassroots level with strong national and international linkages for propelling progress, harmony, and integrated development of the Indian economy. PhD CCI is one of the premier chambers in India to have been accredited with diamond grade by NABET QCI at national and international level. PhD CCI reaches out to more than 150,000 companies with total focus on the development of small and medium businesses. Achieving significant growth and several milestones, exchange traded funds, ETFs, are steadily strengthening the foothold in the mutual fund industry. Though ETFs are considered to be on the passive realm of investing, the increased rationale and product attractiveness are pulling in more investors to its side. The awareness about ETFs is quite low in India. In the last 5 to 6 years, the rising government disinvestments in EPF and other provident funds, coupled with using ETF to acquire equity exposure, has created huge momentum in the space. Last year, assets managed by the ETFs tracking the Nifty 50 index crossed the milestone of rupees 1 lakh crore, while the total assets managed by all ETFs stood at over rupees 2 lakh crores. Recently, Sri Santosh Gangwar, Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment, said that the EPFO has invested rupees 27,532 crores in ETF till February 28, 2021. One of the principal reasons for the rapid growth of ETFs is that their issuers have been at the leading edge in terms of introducing new and innovative products. ETF issuers have generally responded rapidly to the demand for products in hot sectors. For example, numerous commodity ETFs were introduced during the commodity boom of 2003-7. A number of ETFs adhering to environmental, social, and governance investing principles have been launched as well. ETFs have a number of features that can make these investment vehicles ideal for young investors with small amounts of capital to invest. ETFs make it possible to build a diversified portfolio with relatively low investment amounts. Commodity, precious metal, and currency ETFs make it possible for investors to easily add exposure to alternative asset classes simply by buying ETF shares. In addition, ETFs trade throughout the day, providing ample liquidity, and many have relatively low cost structures. The rising retail participation, broadening of the product basket, reinforcing investor sentiments, and support from the government and SEBI serve as a promising opportunity that today's investors should capitalize upon ETF. The investors should educate themselves about ETFs so that they can take informed investment decisions. Today, we have with us eminent panelists to discuss about challenges and opportunities involved with ETFs. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of PhD, I once again welcome you all and look forward to your active and valuable participation in this important session. Thank you, Jai Hind, and God bless all.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind remarks and a warm welcome to our eminent panelists today, and also setting out the tone for this knowledge session. May I now call upon Mr. Vijay Bhushan, Chair of the Capital and the Commodity Markets, to kindly give his address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vivek ji. Good evening to all our panelists as well as all our delegates who have joined this virtual knowledge session on ETF, the rising paradigm for investors, organized by PhD Chamber of Commerce, by the Capital and Commodity Market Committee. I would warmly like to welcome our Senior Vice President, Shri Pradeep.
I think there seems to be some connection issue with Mr.
Secretary General and our moderator for the day, Mr. Okay. Can you hear me? I think, is it okay?
Sir, it's slightly better now, but
Can you hear
in
me?
between we lost you.
Vijay bhai, just try if you
Okay.
stop your video, maybe फिर disturbance नहीं होगी. आप try करके देखिए, नहीं तो अभी इस समय ठीक आ रहे हो.
Continue. Is it okay now? Okay. Is it fine?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Perfect.
Okay. So, welcome to Mr. Hemant Bhatia and Mr. Samir Desai and Mr. Brijesh Sharma from Nippon, and of course Mr. Gaurav Kapoor from the National Stock Exchange. ETF is actually a diversified basket of securities that track a particular index and are traded on the exchange in real-time basis, like a stock. In the Indian market, the first ETF was launched by Benchmark Mutual Fund in December 2001, and it tracked the Nifty 50 index. You may say that what was the need of the ETF? ETF actually allows you to make much smaller investments, as compared to taking a position on the index. The rise of passive investing using ETF is one of the long-term trends in global investing. In the Indian market also, ETF has seen a substantial growth in the last few years, led by, of course, EPFO, insurance companies, family offices, ultra HNIs, and corporate houses. In fact, Nippon India ETF has seen a 100% jump in less than a year in the number of customers from about 9.4 lakhs in March 2020 to almost 19 lakhs in February 2021. So that's the kind of popularity it has received. And ETF is being recommended by large wealth outfits and investment advisors to their clients because of ease of trade, low cost, real-time NAV, and many other such benefits. There has been equity and liquid ETFs for a long time in the market, but in 2019, debt ETF has also joined the bandwagon. Just to give you the journey of the ETF business in the Indian markets, 2001, as I mentioned earlier, the first ETF was launched on the Nifty Bees. 2002, the first liquid ETF, Liquid Bees, was launched. 2009, the first gold ETF was launched. And in the budget of 2013, the government, recognizing the potential of ETF, allowed the pension funds and the insurance companies also to invest in ETFs. And that led to the first public sector ETF, the Central Public Sector Enterprises CPSE ETF, which met with very enthusiastic response, not just in 2013, but also in 2016. And today, as already mentioned, the Employees Provident Fund Organization, EPFO, is the largest investor in ETF. And finally, in 2019, the first debt ETF, Bharat Bond, was launched. So so we have a good history of 20 years with various products. As of September 2020, the Indian market had 93 ETFs across various asset classes. Equity ETFs are the most popular and manage assets of over 1.74 lakh crore across 73 schemes. They are followed by debt ETFs with about 30,500 crore and gold ETF with an AUM of over 13,400 crores. So equities still remains the most popular. Over the 5 years, the assets managed by equity funds have grown at the rate of 20% per annum. It's the normal equity funds. But equity ETFs have grown by 89% year on year in the last 5 years. So you can imagine the interest that has been generated. And the ETFs can be ultra wide in focus, attempting to track a broad index like the S&P 500 or even the performance of the entire country's economy. At the same time, they can be ultra narrow in focus, specializing on a small group of companies in one subsector like banking or consumption. One major issue faced by ETF is that these funds can replicate an index based on the underlying liquidity of the stocks. Since only the stocks in the broad-based indices tend to be liquid, ETF have largely been limited to broad indices. Some of the large capital indexes, such as the Nifty and Sensex, being highly liquid, support large size ETFs and easily deploy the additional money on a day-to-day basis. But as we go down the market cap, replicating the indices gets challenging as the underlying stocks are not highly liquid. As already mentioned by the Senior Vice President, new investors who are not familiar with the intricacies of financial markets will be well served by investing in ETF that tracks the broader market. However, sectoral indexes, once you are familiar with that, sectoral ETFs will enable the funds to take bullish position in specific sectors like infrastructure, banking, etc. As you know, in this budget, there was a great emphasis on infrastructure. So, you could rather than looking at specific infrastructure stocks, could take a position in the infrastructure ETF. That and rewarding a phenomenal role. They have a 73% volume share in the entire among all the ETFs. And this, I think, is on account of the kind of emphasis they have given on this product. And I think Gaurav ji will give a little better idea on that. But the trading that takes place, that's very important because that allows new people to come in. And just to give another important aspect about Nippon, who are going to guide us today, they have one third of the entire folios are with them, and 32%. They have a 32% market share in the ultra, in the high net worth and retail clients. So they are in the private sector. They are the largest. They have the largest share in the ETF in the private sector. So this, I think, we thought will be good for the investors to diversify into different asset classes. As I said, it's already, we are covering equity, we are covering debt, we are covering liquid, we are covering even gold as a commodity. So there is a fairly wide choice. And I look forward to now very specific benefits and details provided by the panel which is there. Thank you so much. And again, I would like to thank Brijesh and Nippon for making this possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vijay Bhushan, Chair of the PhD's Committee on Capital and Commodity Markets, for giving out all those details across to us, and of course putting it on to the speakers, the eminent panelists which we have today, to give out more details. So as you talked about the choice, with nearly 2,200 to choose from, ETFs can actually be used to participate in a wide variety of different markets. Which quickly brings me to our first panelist of the evening, Mr. Hemen Bhatia, Deputy Head, ETF Business, Nippon Life India AMC. So over to you, Mr. Bhatia, for sharing with us the knowledge which you have for us this evening.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the call on ETF Masterclass. I hope all your near and dear ones are healthy and safe. So what we'll do is we'll divide this session into two parts, a brief introduction by myself, followed by an ETF presentation by Samir Desai, post which there will be a presentation by NSE, and then we can keep it open for Q&A. So now I'll quickly introduce our ETF team members, including myself. So my name is Hemen Bhatia, and I'm the Deputy Head for Nippon India ETF Business. I have with me Mr. Samir Desai, who is the National Lead ETF Sales for Distribution. We also have with us Mr. Vishal Jain, who is the Head of ETF for Nippon India ETF Business. All three of us were actually originally part of the Benchmark Mutual Fund, which pioneered ETFs in India. And since then, we moved to Goldman Sachs India in 2011 and in Nippon India AMC in 2016 by way of ETF business acquisitions. Giving some basically some summary on the global markets, ETF has been one of the fastest growing financial instruments globally, and its current AUM stands close to $8 trillion. If you compare it with the size of Indian mutual fund industry, the global ETF size is almost 19 times the size of Indian mutual fund industry. That's how large the size is. Coming to India, in India, the size of ETF industry is close to 2.9 lakh crores, and the ETF industry in India has actually grown close to 25 times over last 6 years. It was close to 11,400 crores AUM in 2014 to 2.9 lakh crores currently. And there have been few key factors which have driven this AUM. One of the key factors was government initiatives, which have directly benefited ETFs, and also because of few regulatory changes by SEBI, which have indirectly benefited passive funds, including ETFs and also the index funds. Giving a brief overview on the Nippon India ETF business, Mr. Vijayji already has given a brief introduction on the Nippon India ETF business.
Mr. Bhatia, sorry for the interruption, but your slides are not moving.
Yeah,
So
no, the slides will move. I'm just giving an introduction.
Okay,
Samir will take over the slides.
Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah. So, giving a brief overview on the Nippon India ETF business, we have the largest basket of ETF products in the industry spread across asset classes. So today we have almost 20 ETFs spread across equity, fixed income, and commodity. Two more ETFs, taking our total to count to 22, have been launched in last week, and we are currently on with the NFO. AUM wise, we have close to 35% market share, and we are one of the largest private sector ETF AMCs if we exclude the government mandates. In terms of the folios, which represent the investor strength, we have one of the highest shares in the ETF folios, displaying our retail strength and volume, which is very important and one of the critical factors by selecting the ETF. We have almost 75% share in the daily average volumes on the stock exchange. Coming to the markets, in the last 12 months, since March 2020, markets had corrected by almost 35 to 40%, and thereon we have seen a sharp recovery with markets crossing its previous high. Hence, the question which comes to investors' mind is, how should investors play the markets amidst so much of volatility? So one of the ways of playing markets is by buying stocks. Maybe another way of playing markets is by buying sectors. One more way of buying markets is by buying active mutual funds and betting on the right fund manager. But we believe that one of the simplest ways of buying markets is playing markets is by buying the whole index consisting of all the stocks or sectors representing that particular segment. So Samir Desai's presentation will focus on two things. First is, how can investors benefit by using passive funds as part of the overall portfolio construction? And second is, how can investors participate in the market amidst so much of volatility? With this, I hand over to Samir Bhai. Over to you, Samir.
Yeah, thanks, Emin. Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me thank PhD, CCI, and NSC for organizing this important event. ETFs are a very important part of portfolio construction today, and they bring down many of the risks of investing. Before I start the presentation, I would like to quote two gentlemen, Dr. Paul Samuelson, the first American to win a Nobel Prize in economics. He once said that investing should be dull and boring, like watching the grass grow and the paint dry. He further said that if you want excitement, take $800 and go to Las Vegas. So it clearly means that if investments become exciting, then you're going wrong. They have to be dull and boring. And I'd also like to quote Professor Meir Statman, famous behavioral finance professor, who once said that the markets may be crazy, but that doesn't make you a psychiatrist. So I think clearly the message from both these gentlemen is, don't attempt to outguess the markets or outperform the markets, and keep it dull and boring. I think both these things happen in index investing, which is what ETFs is all about. So ETFs bring down many of the risks which are associated with the traditional methods of investing. So, if I, look at four common parameters which govern all investments, they are risk, return, diversification, and cost. Return is like fruits of action, karma phala, which is not in our control. Returns is controlled by the markets, but it is human nature to chase something which is not in your control. But what is in my control is the investment karma, which is bringing down the risk of investing, diversifying, and bringing down the cost of investing. So these three parameters, work very well in ETFs, and this is what we shall see in the presentation. So if I move to the first slide, this is a typical snapshot of the NYSE. The trading volumes on the NYSE, all the shaded rows that you can see on this slide are ETFs. Okay, so for example, on 31st December 2020, the S&P 500 ETF, okay, which is the equivalent of our Nifty 50, had a very high trading volume. It was in fact the second highest, higher than many of the famous companies, that we are familiar with. And all the shaded rows here are all ETFs. So increasingly on the NYSE, ETFs are taking the center stage. What this tells us is that American investors are no longer indulging in stock picking. In fact, they are practicing asset allocation via index ETFs. So this tells us the increasing share of ETF volume and usage on the NYSE. The first ETF was launched, way back in 1993, and in less than 3 decades, today the global ETF corpus is close to $8 trillion. This is, larger than the GDP of most countries. So no other product has grown this fast in financial services history as have ETFs. So this is a graphical depiction, of the global growth in ETFs. Today, you have ETFs across equities, sectors, fixed income, commodities, across all asset classes, ETFs are available. If I go to the domestic market, this is the growth of ETFs in India. It has literally exploded over the last 5 years. Benchmark launched the first ETF scheme way back in 2001. At launch, the Nifty Bees had a corpus of 7 crores. From that humble number, today you have close to 3 lakh crores of ETF assets in India, and this is increasing rapidly. So today you have all kinds of investors using ETFs, right from pension funds to insurance companies to treasuries to HNIs and retail investors. The government of India has been a major catalyst in ETF growth. So, for example, in the in the 2013 budget, the finance minister abolished STT on buying of ETFs, and on selling of ETFs on the stock exchange, there is a negligible STT of 0.01%. This is much higher than the STT which is levied on buying and selling of individual stocks. In 2012, the government of India decided to disinvest via the ETF route, and Heyman was a part of that group that pitched the ETF usage or the ETF advantages to the government of India. So as a result of that, the first CPSE tranche was launched in 2014, and following that initial offer, there have been many successful offerings, and in fact, the CPSE has taken the ETF usage to every nook and corner of India. Provident funds were allowed in 2015 to have incremental exposure to equities. As a result of that announcement by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Labor, the EPFO decided to adopt the ETF route for equity exposure. So that was also another major development which increased the usage of ETFs. Also in 2018, what happened was SEBI announced scheme rationalization. So what that meant was, so supposing you have a large cap fund in India, at least 80% of the portfolio, the fund manager has to choose from the Nifty 100 stocks. The balance 20, he can choose from mid caps and small caps. Now, prior to this announcement, what used to happen was, let's say you had a large cap alpha fund, 50 to 60% of the portfolio would be from large caps, the balance would be from mid and small caps, whereas the benchmarking would be done to the large cap indices and outperformance was shown. So this practice was put to a halt by the regulator in 2018. Also in 2018, SEBI announced that the benchmark that has to be used has to be the total returns index versus the price index, which was used earlier. So some of these measures announced by the Indian regulator made the measurements proper, and hence the alpha diminished further after that. Now let us go to the index, investing concept. Why indexing is a very important concept and a very potent tool for taking exposure to various asset classes. So this is our traditional belief that active investing. When I say active investing means that we believe that if we select good companies or give our money to fund managers, they will select good companies and give us a return higher than the index, which is known as trying to generate alpha or outperforming the index. This is what we have been made to believe. And we also believe that gifted portfolio managers with proven track records will continue to generate alpha in the future. So in this session, in this particular segment, we will have to unlearn some of the things that we have learned so far. Now, what is the first hurdle to generating alpha? It is the huge competition that we see in the Indian markets today. So, for example, this is the list of the entities, registered entities in India who are in the business of generating alpha. So, all your asset management companies, your life insurers, FPIs, AIFs, PMSs. In fact, this list does not include the data of pension funds, treasuries, family offices, all of whom are also in the business of generating alpha. So when you have almost 36,000 entities, that means a large professional management base which is competing with each other trying to generate alpha. So supposing I take an average of 5 professionals per entity, all those CAs, CFAs, MBAs, then you have a huge population competing with each other trying to generate alpha. So this leads to what is known as the zero-sum equation, which was eloquently defined by Professor William Sharpe. We all know the Sharpe ratio, okay, which we frequently use in mutual fund risk measurements. Now, Professor William Sharpe wrote a paper in 1990 known as titled The Arithmetic of Active Investing. What it meant was, what Professor Sharpe was trying to say is, investors in the aggregate are the market. Therefore, investors in the aggregate cannot beat the market because they are the market. So what it means is, if some investors outperform the market in a particular time period, then the others have to underperform to that extent. So outperformance is a zero-sum equation. If some managers outperform in a given time period, by definition of the zero-sum equation, the other portfolio managers have to underperform to that extent. So mathematically, outperformance is a zero-sum equation. Now, this is, I can use a very simple analogy to describe the zero-sum equation. We see this in action in real life. So imagine the Mumbai local trains. In the Mumbai local trains, in the rush hour, a lot of commuters rush to catch window seats. Window seats are limited in number. So let's say on a particular day during the peak rush hour, a few commuters caught window seats. They generated alpha. As a consequence, the other commuters are hanging outside. They are the underperformers. And somebody like me, who is an ETF guy, I did not get the window seat. I got the other seat, but I will reach my destination in a risk-adjusted fashion. The guys who rushed to catch the window seats, they took excess risk. So alpha was all about excess risk. Now, if I, write a research report and say, the guys who caught window seats on Monday, invest money in them, I find that the window seat catchers have changed on Tuesday. The outperformers have become the underperformers, and the underperformers, the guys who are hanging outside in the train journey, are now catching window seats. So outperformers and underperformers change all the time because window seat catching technology is a zero-sum game, just like what happens in the markets. So what Professor Sharpe wrote, investors in as a group cannot outperform the market because they are the market. So investors as a group must underperform the markets because of the costs of participation. Now, since passive investors have low costs, they will outperform active investors in the markets. And this financial equation or this mathematical equation holds good for all geographies, whether it is the US markets, whether it is India, whether it is Far East. This is like the law of gravity. It does not change anywhere. Okay. So what this led to is another, important concept in finance, which has been much researched, which is known as the paradox of skill. What does the paradox of skill tell us? This was first proposed by Michael Mauboussin in 2013. What it means is, in a competitive activity, when you have a lot of skilled participants competing with each other, ironically, luck will play a greater role in the final outcome. So in the outperformance and the underperformance, it is a random outcome where perhaps luck plays a major role. So if I, move to the Indian data, this is the SPIVA scorecard. What does SPIVA mean? SPIVA stands for Standard & Poor Index versus Active. This is the standard measurement globally for active and passive. And this has been published for India all over the last 10 years. So if I see the latest SPIVA data for India, for let's say for a 5-year time period ended June 2020, as you can see here, 80% of the large cap mutual fund managers in India underperform the large cap indices. For a 3-year time period ended June 2020, 83% of the large cap fund managers underperform the indices. I see a similar kind of, outcome in the ELSS space also. Okay. So this is competition. If I see some of the older SPIVA data for India, for a 5-year time period ended December 2009, 70% of large cap mutual fund managers in India underperform the Nifty. Now, what are some of the scientific measurements that SPIVA takes into account? Let me mention one or two. The first is known as survivorship bias. What does this mean? Supposing you have 50 large cap funds available to you today, from which you want to, let's say, pick and choose and let's say start an SIP. Now, it may so happen that after 5 years, all the 50 funds may not survive because the bad performers will either be shut down or merged into better performing schemes. So data will get biased in favor of survivors. This is known as survivorship bias. And this correction or this adjustment is made in the SPIVA scorecards. The other parameter that SPIVA takes into account is correct benchmarking, apples to apples benchmarking. The correct benchmarks are chosen. If you have a large cap scheme, a large cap benchmark is chosen. If you have a mid cap scheme, a mid cap benchmark is chosen, and so on and so forth. This has got rectified to some extent in India, in the SEBI scheme rationalization, which I mentioned earlier. Let's go to another data set. This has been made by my colleague Hemen. What Hemen has done here is he has taken two data sets, asset weighted returns and equal weighted returns of the large cap funds in India, large cap alpha funds. So for example, for a 3-year time period ended March 16, 2021, the asset weighted returns of the large cap funds in India are less than the Nifty 100 or the large cap benchmark return. What does asset weighted returns mean? It means that the largest schemes, the largest alpha funds, large cap alpha funds, which have the maximum corpus, they have the highest weighting in the universe. Okay. So in other words, schemes where investors are investing their maximum money have the maximum weightage. So these schemes are underperforming the indices. Now, if I go to the equal weighted performance, what this means is all the large cap alpha funds have got an equal weighting. So even on an equal weighted basis, the alpha funds are underperforming the indices in all time periods. So this is another way of looking at the data. Here also we see that the large cap fund managers are actually not adding any value. Let us go to this heat map. Now heat map is another wonderful data made by Hemen. What he did was he took all the large cap funds in existence from March 2008 to March 2020. So this is a long series of data, and what he did was he assigned a color code to each of the large cap funds. The names have been removed for compliance reasons, but this, for example, this color, the black color represents a particular large cap fund in India. So for example, if I look at the first column on the extreme left-hand side, then for a 3-year time period ended March 2011, this particular fund manager was top ranked. Now, as you can see in the subsequent time periods, the rank is falling. And other fund managers who had a lower ranking have moved up in rankings in the subsequent time periods. So if I am an investor and in hindsight, or if I look at the past performance or the past rankings and I decide to invest money, then I find that the same outcome is not happening in the future. Why? Because the zero-sum game, the competition, the paradox of skill is taking its toll on the fund managers. Too many skilled guys, hardworking guys, highly remunerated people are trying to catch window seats. So all of them are not able to catch window seats. Some are catching window seats, some are hanging outside, and this musical chair goes on in the zero-sum game of the markets. If I move on to the next slide, this is another wonderful data set made by Hemen. So another argument that we hear is, supposing there is a big fall in the markets, in the subsequent recovery, the fund managers will outperform the indices. So let us look at this. Again, we have taken the last 10 years. We have taken data from the subprime crisis. Okay, in 2008, when the markets globally fell big time. The bellwether indices like Nifty, Sensex, the next 50 indices, they also fell big time. They lost almost 50 to 60% value in absolute terms. Now, if you look at the first data set, sorry. If I look at the first data set, 20th November 2008, the data on the left-hand side, from 20th November 2008, during the peak of the subprime crisis, over the next 1 year, the average large cap category gave a return of 94%. Over the next 3 years, the average large cap category, that is the alpha funds, gave a return of 25.27%. And over the next 5 years, the average large cap category, that is the alpha funds, gave a return of 19.58%. And in the same time period, the Nifty 50 and the next 50, the two large cap indices, gave a much higher return. So the indices did better in the upswing, in the upturn, than the fund managers. Now, if I look at the recent fall during the pandemic over the last 1 year, from March 2020 to March 2021, in the recovery, the average large cap category gave a return of 85%. The two indices, large cap indices, outperformed the fund managers by a big margin. Now, this is the average return. So some of the individual fund managers would have done even worse. So what this means is, even when the markets turn, the indices are actually doing much better than the fund managers. So, I'm going to quote two analogies from sports. If the outperforming fund managers are gold medalists, the underperforming fund managers are bronze medalists, then index is silver medal by default. When you put money in the index, you are going to be in the silver medal position by default. And as we have seen in the Indian data, most of the managers are in the bronze medal position. Let me use one more analogy from sports. The index is like the national cricket team. The national cricket team is always going to be there. Individual stocks or individual players will move in and out of the national team. Individual managers will also move in and out, but the national team is always going to remain. I'm reminded of some words, written by an American registered investment advisor in an article some years back. He says you should put your money in the index because indexes don't change jobs. They don't quit companies. They don't demand bonuses. They don't fall sick. They don't take vacations. They don't underperform. They are always working for you 24/7 by 365. So invest in a portfolio which is eternal. Individual stocks will come and go. Individual managers will outperform, underperform. So the index is a portfolio which is always going to be there. I'm tempted to, use an analogy from the Ramayana. In the Ramayana, there is an incident, where Lakshman ji is injured and Hanuman ji is sent for stock picking, Jadi Booty. Instead of looking for that Jadi Booty, he carries the entire Nifty 50 index, that mountain. Okay, so that is the ETF. So if you can, understand this analogy, then ETF investment becomes very easy. So instead of looking for Jadi Booties, carry the entire Nifty 50 index, the next 50 index. This is the way to invest. So if I take the examples of two of our oldest ETFs in India, the Nifty 50 ETF from our stable, which was launched in December 2001, the return till now is almost 16% CAGR. The Nifty Next 50 Index, another ETF which we launched in February 2003, the return is almost 19.5% CAGR till date. Now, over the last 17 years, 20 years that these two ETFs have been around, think of the amount of stocks that have come and gone. Think of the amount of managers that have come and gone. But these two ETFs, between them, represent India Inc. They represent equities as an asset class. And they have given returns good enough to beat inflation, which is the main purpose of putting money in equities as an asset class. So, with this, let me summarize why index investing is very important. First of all, it is low cost. You will get a Nifty ETF in India today for as low as 5 basis points or 0.05%. Think of the expense of an active fund against that. It will be much more expensive. The portfolio is diversified because it's an index. It is low cost, and you're doing away with the non-systematic risk of investing, which is your manager risk, fund manager risk, and stock specific risk. And you're bringing down your risk only to the systemic or the market risk, which is always going to be there, whatever method of investing you use. So now let me go to ETFs, having understood the indexing philosophy, because the underlying portfolio of an ETF is an index, whether it's an equity indexed or a fixed income index. So what are the two advantages of an ETF? First of all, the underlying portfolio is an index, so you are diversified and you can buy this portfolio real time, just like you buy and sell equity shares. So if the market is down, let's say 500 points at 10:30 in the morning, then I can buy the ETF at real time prices. So buying and selling ETFs is identical to buying and selling stocks. The only difference is, instead of buying an individual stock and concentrating your risk in just one security, you are buying the national cricket team, which is a diversified portfolio. So this is the advantage of an ETF. The liquidity of an ETF is very high, whether it is the broad market ETF, a sector ETF, because you have the authorized participant mechanism in place, who is nothing but a broker appointed by an AMC, who is a market maker who provides liquidity on the exchange. And as was said, right in the introduction, we have a very high share of daily average volumes, more than 75% for our ETFs. And that is simply because we have the largest investor base of ETFs in India. ETFs are very versatile. They can be used by traders. They can be used by long-term investors. They can be used to gain market access. What do I mean by market access? Supposing the market falls big time, there's always a confusion which stocks to buy, which sectors to look at, which fund managers to put money in. If you ask 5 experts, they will give you 10 different opinions. So instead, what one can do is one can simply buy ETFs and start participating in the market. So who are the users of ETFs? As I said, right from institutional investors like provident funds, Government of India, insurance companies, treasuries, to financial advisors, family offices, HNIs, and retail investors. All of them are using ETFs in India today. What we normally recommend is a core and satellite asset allocation approach. Asset allocation is what drives portfolio returns. It is not market timing. It is not security selection. So we generally recommend that the core part of a portfolio should be in indices, because when I allocate my money to indices, I am at least going to get the market rate of return, whatever it is going forward. Fund managers may outperform and underperform, but here I will at least, I am assured of the market rate of return. And the satellite component of the portfolio can be invested in various alpha strategies, right from active funds to smart beta ETFs to stocks. What are the key parameters for selecting an ETF? So the question may arise is, there are many Nifty 50 ETFs offered by various AMCs. So how do I select the right ETF? So here we have taken the example of the Nifty 50 ETFs. So three important parameters. One is the expense ratio, which is the annualized cost. The lowest expense ratio ETF is what one should use. So if you see fund number 1, again we have removed the name for compliance reasons, but fund number 1 is our fund, the oldest Nifty 50 ETF in India. As you can see in the 4th column, the expense ratio is only 5 basis points. Okay, so it is the lowest expense ratio. Then you see the tracking error. Tracking error tells you how closely the ETF tracks the index. So we have the lowest tracking error. And the most important parameter is the daily average volume. So in case of our ETF, it is close to 27 crores. These are NSE numbers for all the ETF schemes. The second highest ETF, as you can see, is 1/7 of our volume. So daily average volume is very, very critical in an ETF. Tracking error is important and cost is important. So with all the parameters, our product scores the best. Let me just take one more example. This is the Nifty Next 50 ETF, which is the smaller large cap index. Okay. Here also, our product is the most liquid. It has the lowest impact cost. It has the amongst the lowest tracking error and the lowest expense ratio. So this is how you select an ETF scheme. So before I end my presentation, let me summarize. ETFs are low cost. They are passive, so there is no fund manager risk. There is no stock specific risk. ETFs or indices are always going to remain. They will give you the return of the index, whatever it is going forward. So they should form a very, very important part of your portfolio asset allocation. I will just end with one, analogy from our scriptures. Indices are the Virat Swarup of the market. Virat Swarup is always going to be there. Individual stocks and individual managers are Nashwar. Nashwar, when I say, the returns will come and go, whereas the indexes are always going to be there. So invest in the Virat Swarup of the market. With this, I end my session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Desai and Mr. Bhatia, for a wonderful presentation, so detailed, so accurate. I mean, we could see so much of effort going into, in any case, making the presentation, and let alone the simplicity and the explanation which you gave of each and every slide. I think comes out very clearly that it's a very, very good prospect, and for somebody to get into their portfolios. And frankly speaking, I didn't know even half of the things which you have told us today, and tempts me very much to get into ETFs. With time for us to now invite our last panelist for the day, and after which we can get into some kind of a discussion and Q&As. We have with us Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, Vice President and Head North of the National Stock Exchange of India Limited. Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, with so much of information flowing ever since the start of the evening, I would like to hear from you. What would you like to say to this? And in the meanwhile, can I request Mr. Desai or Mr. Bhatia to kindly bring down their presentation so that we can hear all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. So over to you, Mr. Kapoor.
Is my slide visible?
Yes, very much. It's visible. You might like to make it full screen. Thank you. Looks
Okay.
wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. Very good evening. Evening to all of you, senior fellow members for PhD Chamber, officials from Nippon, and other participants. Uh, See, passive, there is a lot of discussion which is going on, and there is always a large discussion which goes on between active and passive investment. And passive investment has become quite popular in India over the last few years, be it through index funds or through exchange traded fund. We've seen as of October 20, there are close to 96 ETFs, 75 schemes, over close to 2 lakhs crore of, AUM which is there. 5 years ago, if you see, the assets were around 200 crores with 57 schemes. And even if you still go a decade back, there are hardly, 100 crores, AUM which was there. So since then, passive funds, because they have a lower cost, as Samir was mentioning, because it is a rule-based investing, it is boring, it is without any subjectivity, it removes behavioral bias, and that is the reason what Samir in his presentation also was typically saying was it is very difficult any active fund manager to actually outperform any index. So on a continuous basis, he may be good in one quarter, he may be good in another quarter, but over a period of time, it becomes actually very difficult for any fund manager to outperform the index, because that is what he's being paid for, to outperform the index. Vis-a-vis ETF are supposed to give returns as close to the index which they are tracking, and that is where in one of the last slides Sami mentioned about the tracking error. So the lower the tracking error, the closest it is to the return of that index which is replicating, the better the performance of a passive fund is. The year 2020 has been a landmark year for passively managed funds in India, be it index or ETF. At a time when the market was reeling under the effects, of pandemic, we've seen passive investments broke new grounds, both in terms of investor interest and assets under management. This is despite passive investing being at a very nascent stage in India. We at NSE have always felt there needs to be a vehicle for anyone who wants to test equity markets, who wants to buy stocks. There should be one instrument which should be very convenient, much more safer, or maybe an entry for capital markets. And that is how we worked with Benchmark in 2001, when December, that is what Sabir was mentioning, December 2001 is when Nifty Bees was being launched. And we felt, if people are have a view on India, and Nifty 50, which is representing stock of the nation, the top 50 companies of India, and if you invest, generally the principle is if the index is at say 5,000, at that point of time it used to be at 5,000. So 1/10 of the index, which is 500 rupees, if you invest 500 rupees, you are basically going to put your money into top 50 stocks of India, which is the Nifty 50. And that is how we promoted, we created awareness about Nifty ETF in those early days, along with a benchmark. And we at NSE have always believed that, ETFs are there to stay, and the journey is likely to be akin to the developed global markets, where passive products have progressed from plain vanilla products, replacing benchmark indices, to factor-based single factor. So I think Samir did not touch on that, but I will definitely touch. There is some excitement which is being brought to ETF, which is the smart beta ETFs. So many of the fund managers are now bringing excitement to the dull and boring ETF, product profile, and that is how smart beta ETFs also are getting launched. Globally, if you see, the ETF is around 8 trillion, and it has grown almost 19%, from December 2007 to Jan 2021. And US has primarily been the largest beneficiary in driving this growth. Almost 69% of the business is in US. Europe has around 15%, and Asia Pac has close to 12%, and the other is with other countries all put together. Let me, though we have discussed about ETF, prima facie, the benefit of between an index fund and stocks, it's a combination of both. It's listed on exchange. It can be traded on a daily basis. You can put limit orders. So you're trading basically like a stock. You need to have a demat holding because you are going to trade on the stock exchange. So that is something which is very mandatory if you want to invest in ETFs. It is a low expense ratio. It is an open structure. You can enter as well as exit, and it replicates the index. So all mutual fund, if they have to create an ETF, they need to create an index. They need to basically replicate or buy securities and replicate the index return. And NSE indices, which is a 100% subsidiary of NSE, is the one leading indices company in India and in many terms globally also. And the Nifty 50 or the Nifty brand is being owned by the NSE indices. It provides index creation and maintenance services to all other exchanges. It has close to 225 real-time indices on equity, debt, all put together. And the NSE indices have been aggregated and got awards from Asia Asset Management in the last 2 years also. The Nifty, as Sameer was mentioning, is a lot of investments in ETF goes through Nifty, and Nifty, as you know, is the flagship index of India, and it basically reflects the top 50 companies of India. Nifty global presence, it is already, we have close to 80 plus ETFs in India. Nifty ETFs are listed not only in India, they're listed abroad also in almost 20 exchanges in Nasdaq, Toronto, Deutsche Börse, London, Stuttgart, Borsa Italiana. So there are fund houses which have creative, funds based on Nifty ETFs, and Nifty derivatives are basically largely traded on three exchanges, which is the NSE, the domestic, the NSE IFSC, and the Singapore Exchange. If you see, ETF are largely categorized in three major ways. One is could be a broad indices, which is basically the Nifty 50, the Next 50, or the Nifty 100 put together. The Next 50 used to be basically the Nifty Junior earlier, if Sameer remembers, and that is how he was referring in one of the last slides, that it has given almost 19%. So Nifty 50, the Next 50, Nifty 100, these are the broad indices. And then you have basically sectorial or thematic indices which are there. And now the smart beta indices which are available, which is basically someone defines that, ETFs are generally passive ETFs which invest into Nifty ETF or broad indices are basically dull-based investing. If you bring some tweaking to it, you minus some, caveats to it, but keep the broader principle in place. That is what smart beta, investing is all about. Broadly, touch upon the smart beta indexes, the selection of the stock is based on factors. Example, it can be on a high value, it could be on a high growth, it could be high alpha, it could be high momentum, it could be low volatility. So this is basically, you define one of the factors which you want to pick up, because the Nifty 50 is basically based on the market capitalization of the top 50 companies. The smart beta picks up factors like high alpha, the high volatility, something like Nifty 100 low volatility. So Nifty 100 low volatility 30 index is basically, it picks up the 30 stocks in the top 100 Nifty 100 companies which are having low volatility. So it is basically the basket is of 100 stocks, but it is adding an element or a factor of low volatility so that you are able to get a better return from a pure passive ETF investment. If you see from a leadership point of view, NSE indices, which develops all these indices, and over and above this, only all mutual funds create their ETF. 76% of the AUM of the ETF listed in India are tracking NSE Nifty indices. And 64% of the AUMs actively managed equity funds in India are benchmarked to Nifty indices. And total of 12 ETFs or Nifty indices are listed internationally. This graph has been largely being shown where there is a stellar performance which is there in terms of both the growth of equity as well as the debt ETF. But few things which need to be picked up here is the domestic ETF AUM has grown almost 20 times over the last 5 years, from February 2016 to February 21. So that is a very, very good sign. And the total ETF AUM has increased close to 46% during the last 1 year. So that is the kind of growth ETF business is showing in India. If you see the 9.4% on the right hand side top corner, which is which basically mentions the amount of passive investment share in overall AUMs of mutual fund, which is almost now 9.4%, which is very high. The overall AUM of passive fund is around close to 2.8 trillion as on January 31st. The other thing is the equity ETF dominate. They're close to 81% share of the domestic ETF. There are ETFs on debt. There are ETFs on commodities like gold ETFs. Globally, there are ETFs on currency. It could be on other commodities also. But in India, largely the dominance is on is of equity ETF, and within equity ETF, Nifty 50 continues to be the most popular index for ETF in India. So 70%, 72% of equity AUM is linked to Nifty indices, whether it is Nifty 50, the Bank Nifty, or the Nifty CPSC. There are close to 77 ETFs which are listed and traded on Indian exchanges. 59 of them are traded on NSE, which is based on Nifty indices, and total is close to around 2,20,000 crores. On the debt ETF side, there are 12 ETFs which are there on the debt ETF side, almost AUM of 34,000 crores. Largely, Bharat Bond ETF is the one which has the highest share of the debt ETF space, and the other one is definitely, if we have to put it, there are 1D rate index, which is close to 3,200 crores. These are the top index. If you see, Nifty 50 has almost 17 indices, 17 ETF, which are on Nifty 50, and they are close to 1 lakh crore. And I think somewhere in August 20th or so last year is when Nifty 50, all these ETFs put together crossed 1 lakh crore as an AUM. So that's a very positive sign. The other one is the Nifty Bharat Bond Index series, which has almost 4 ETFs on it, close to 31,000 crores. The Nifty Bank has 9 ETFs on it, close to 18,000 crores. The Nifty CPSC, which is being it's basically a government vehicle for disinvestment of the companies, being managed by Nippon itself, close to 11,000 crores. And the Bharat 22, which was later on used as a disinvestment vehicle, subsequent to the success which in Nifty CPSC was had given to government. So they had launched Bharat 22, which is close to 6,000 crores. So 92% of the ETF AUM is benchmarked to the top 10 indices. So that is what this chart would tell. If you are investing in any of these ETFs, probably you are in safer hands. And there are something Nasdaq 100 also. One of the AMC had launched Nasdaq 100 if you want to invest in the top 100 companies of Nasdaq, and that also international ETF also is available. Globally, on the trading side, if you see the US turnover, if you see in the cash equity side, 30% comes from ETF. In India, it is only not even 1% as of now. So London Stock Exchange, almost 16% of the turnover comes from ETF. Germany, 10%, Japan, 12%, South Korea, 14%, China, 6%. So in India, presently, what we have seen is, maybe in one or two slides, I'll show you, though the participation of investors is very encouraging. FI calendar year 19, we had 16 lakh investors who were invested. This last year, almost it has doubled to 32 lakh investors. But the volume, which brings liquidity of in and out on the exchange platform, that is not grown too much, though it is close to around 270 to 300 crores on a daily average basis. So this is the number of investors who have traded. If you see way back in calendar year 2015, almost 2.8 lakh investors were there. It was almost constant for 2016, and 2017 is when actually it doubled. And then it moved to 16 lakh investors, and then 32 lakh investors, which were there last calendar year. So if you see from a trading point of view, NSE holds almost 99% trading volume on ETF across all these ETFs which are listed. Our daily average is 274 crores. Mr. Vijay Bhushan also mentioned to me, if you can showcase, what is the distribution of volume on exchange on a daily average basis. If you see on the left hand side, liquid Bs is one of the most traded one with 100, and then there are other which are on a daily average of 30 to 29 to 26 crores. This is definitely for a very larger period, not for a specific day or duration. What we have seen is the government disinvestment program was the first trigger, the CPSE ETF in 2014. The exchange NSE, we were very, very proactive on promoting ETF through our investor awareness programs. Benchmark was one of the mutual fund at that point in time, which was largely on passive investments, and they only had ETF in their basket. And so we only got that trigger, someone like Government of India coming and promoting this product. And that is how, with a Benchmark, and then later on I think they're shifting to move to Goldman Sachs, is when we created the CPSE ETF index, which was basically a vehicle for government to do disinvestment in one single tranche. So what used to happen is, earlier government used to have an offer for sale, and for offer for sale, there were basically they used to come with each and every company in different durations. If there are 10 companies which they wanted to dilute and raise capital from capital markets, they will not be able to time, because it may so happen that some company they want to divest in January, some may happen in next quarter, and it may so happen the cyclic of the market itself may not help them to dilute their stake and raise capital. So that is how the CPSE ETF was being created, an index was being created, so that all the 10 companies were put under the same basket, and it was being approached to the market as such, and almost close to, if I remember, 3,000 crores, the fund was being raised at that point of time. And subsequently, there are 7 tranches which have been issued, and over, I think, close to 50,000 crores would have have been raised through CPSE ETF. So government, if government push both through CPSE ETF, Bharat 22 ETF, and later on when government wanted wanted the PSUs to raise debt capital, and that is how the Bharat bond ETF was being launched along with Edelweiss. So this helped basically AAA and AA set of companies to raise debt capital through a debt ETF. So this was very important. The other one is the EPFO investment. As Amir was mentioning, they graded from 5% initially, and then 10% and 15, and now they've kept anything between 5 to 15%. And many of the pension funds now, because they follow the guidelines of EPFO as benchmark, are now starting investing directly into Nifty ETF, and that is how we have seen almost a lakh of crore, AUM has been created, and EPFO investment is definitely one of the largest in that. So that is the kind of success you can reach if government, because the expense ratio was so low. Bharat bond ETF, is one of the least expensive, less than even 5 paisa, and I would definitely add to it ETF, the expense ratio, and what we pay for an active fund is basically, I'll call it as an inflation. Whatever expense being charged on the active fund management is largely, you can say this is an inflation for you because it is eating onto your investment. So that is the benefit of ETF. So the debate over active and passive has been gaining momentum as several of the active funds are struggling to beat their respective benchmarks. Almost two-third, of the fund managers are not able to beat the benchmark, and this is especially at a time when the benchmark indices have been growing from strength to strength. So that is how, the other thing is there are a lot of new platforms which are coming, e-commerce platforms which are coming, people who are moving um, uh, and bringing technology closer to people. So people like new age broking houses like Zerodha, Paytm, people who have been on the other side of the business, who have been working on the technology side. For them, they feel ETFs are a conduit, or any investor who wants to test the equity or capital market should firstly invest into ETF and have a good experience of the markets. Uh, Going forward, what I largely feel is rule-based investing without subjectivity and behavioral bias is going to has a very high potential for any investor to get a far better returns. So ETF investing and passive investing is definitely going to stay. And thank you, PSD, and definitely Vijay Bhushanji for inviting, because for NSE, ETF is one product which we feel is the flagship product in terms of anyone who wants to have a good experience on capital market, and rule-based investing is the right product for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kapoor. I think an excellent analysis, and of course, the knowledge as well as the advice shared by you, I'm sure must be really helping a lot of those people who are locked in right now. Um, I have a few questions which I see in the chat box and some of them in my WhatsApp as well. There is a question which says tax implications of ETF redemption for a retail investor. So I'd like Mr. Kapoor, would you like to take that question?
So I can tell you from an STT perspective, there is no STT on the buy side. There is only STT on the sell side. And vis-a-vis, if you buy a stock, you have to pay STT on both sides. So ultimately, that is one huge benefit. The second benefit is is even the ETF STT is very less. It is 0.001%, which is effectively 100 rupees a crore, vis-a-vis almost 0.01% for if anyone buys stocks. I don't know about the capital gain or anything. It will be anything which is related to funds.
Yeah, we'll cover that. So for any mutual
Wants to
fund,
pitch in or even wants to pitch in,
yeah, yeah.
please.
So for any equity ETF, the taxation of a equity mutual fund applies, which is holding 12 months and more. It qualifies as long term, and the long term tax LTCG has to be paid on that, which is 10% without indexation plus surcharge and cess. Less than 12 months in an equity product qualifies as it qualifies as short term, and you have to pay 15% tax, similar to any other equity mutual fund. On the debt side, again, the taxation of other than equity products qualifies as debt, and the taxation of all the debt fund exactly applies to the ETFs as well. But there, the long term, in case of debt funds, it is 36 months and more qualifies as long term, wherein you have to pay 20% with indexation, and less than 36 months is short term, wherein you pay the taxes as per your marginal rate of return.
Okay. So that's a good clarification. Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. I think
Yeah.
it's the capital gains tax which worries us a lot, generally speaking, vis-a-vis the STTs.
Just one
Oh, please.
clarification, which means that even the STT impact is lower on an ETF because it's
Yeah.
only on the sale. Therefore, really speaking, while in a normal share it is on both sides, so there is some benefit of STT that also flows to the investor in ETF. I didn't know this.
Yeah. So Vijayji, what happened was, while we launched CPSE ETF in 2014, we had done a lot of groundwork, and we had convinced the ministry that if you pay tax on the ETF, okay, that it leads to double taxation, because the underlying basket which the ETF purchases, there's already a STT which is being paid on that. So
Okay.
investor will actually end up paying double tax, and hence the STT was removed before the CPS ETF was launched. So on on the buy side, there's zero STT on ETFs, and on sell side, it's practically negligible. It is 0.001%, which is practically negligible.
Right, right. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for that answer. We have two people waiting to ask questions, but before that, let me take this question to Mr. Desai. How do ETF prices change on real-time basis? Is any tracking error done on daily quotes as against the relevant index? Is one of the questions which I have with me.
Uh, can Heman answer this
Yeah,
question?
yeah. I'll take that. Samir. So, see, what happens is, ETFs are like stocks. ETFs are listed on stock exchange. So, what we do as a fund house is we provide a facility of indicative NAV on our website, so that at any point of time, while an investor wants to buy and sell the ETFs on stock exchange, they have a reference price at which they should consider, and so that while they buy and sell, they are close to the fair price and that reference price which we quote on our website. Uh, uh, I hope that answers the question.
I just want to further to that question. This NAV, that indicative NAV is available on your website.
Yeah.
And no, so do you track between, because you have market makers, that
Yeah.
what was the difference between that NAV and then the actual trades?
No, so what happens is, that is for the investor to take a call at the time of execution. For example, most of our ETFs, if you see the real-time NAV, generally, for most of our popular ETFs like say Nifty 50 or say Nifty Next 50, we have market makers on both sides of the trade within plus minus 20 to 25 basis points, the real-time NAV. And this is, I'm saying, on the higher side. If you see, Nifty B is which is our flagship ETF. It trades close to 25 to 30 crores a day. That's the average volume. Okay, So most of the times, because there's so much of natural liquidity in our ETFs, because we have one of the highest share in the folios, it trades close to the real time price. So plus minus 15, 20 basis points is on the higher side, I can say. Generally, it trades very close to the real time price.
All right. So I have two more questions in the chat box, but let me first try and allow Neelam ji to ask her question. So, Madam Neelam, I'm allowing you to talk. You may unmute yourself now, and we should be able to hear you. Ms. Neelam, if you are there, can you unmute yourself? Okay, in the meanwhile, let me allow the next attendee logged in as Kaj. So,
Yeah, I am here.
yeah,
Very good evening to all of you.
very
It's
good
a very
evening.
nice presentation, of course. Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, this is a question from you because many a times I track all these ETFs being traded into the stock exchanges. There are approximately 10 to 15 AMCs which have really floated these ETFs into a different categories, including, of course, Nifty and Nifty 50 and NB20 and so many different nomenclature. The problem which I have seen, particularly the depth which is coming forth, despite the fact that you have the market maker concept, you will hardly find in many, except of course this Nippon mutual fund or the ICICI mutual fund, which had really floated this Bharat 22. You will hardly find the real keen interest of the AMCs or their market makers to participate into the trading of these ETFs. You will notice that in many of the cases, just 1 unit or 2 units or 5 units are being traded many a times. If you just take the data, then you will find that almost 90% of the AMCs, they do not have any interest except to float their ETFs. You had mentioned that just 0.5% is our total participation into this ETF space, that too after 20 long years. China started this concept, I think, 7 years before or 8 years before. They are at 6%. I think something has to be done from your end. Otherwise, all these AMCs will simply float and they will not really participate, and people will not really find good occasion basically either to enter or exit again. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sir,
Mr. Kaj. Yes.
I think a very valid point, sir, and definitely ETF launch has been almost there for 20 years, so definitely it's not a new product. There had been huge amount of challenges. I don't want to tell you those challenges. Some of them have been removed by government coming in and investing into ETF. But presently what is happening is, though ETF is being gives you the flexibility of trading like a stock, but people, if you've seen one of my slides, the number of investors were earlier 6 lakhs and now it is close to 32 lakhs. So even those 32 lakh investors are buying ETF and they're holding it. They're actually not coming and selling it like stock, which probably they would have done in case of, say, Reliance or any other. I'm not just saying the use of word Reliance, it could be any stock. So the mentality for stocks is some of them may be value investors, some of them may be an intraday investors. So those intraday or speculative kind of people actually bring liquidity on the secondary markets, which is prima facie. I think it is more with the product, because ETF, when we are talking about value-based investing, we are asking someone to hold it for a certain duration of time. We are not asking him to do buy and sell on an intraday basis or have a view for 2 days, 3 days. So I think that is the main reason why liquidity is not there. The other thing is, we from our side, I think one of the slides I did not show, there were two things which we did, and we actually brought an incentive scheme also, somewhere around, I think, 2015 or so, on a Nifty ETF, almost 2 or 3 times. At that point of time, the number of investors were around 2 lakh. Today we at least have 32 lakh investors. That means people know about ETF, right? So I think our job will become much more easier if we tell them. We have given them the cross margin benefit. The other thing which it is slightly technical, but for people who are on the trading side, they understand, how much margin benefit they would get if they, have an offsetting position and they keep Nifty ETF, and they have an offsetting position in, say, those 50 stocks in stock future or index Nifty future in derivative. So your margin actually get reduced by almost 70%. So from an exchange side, even our transaction charges also were very minuscule for a large period of time to help, people to invest into ETFs. We personally feel, because there is less incentive for brokers or the intermediaries who are actually interacting with investors on a day in, day out basis rather than an exchange. And because it is less incentive for them, probably, it doesn't, you don't see much of the volumes. If the intermediaries are active and they treat it like a stock, then probably you can actually, see these volumes picking up, because from all angle, whether it is an STT angle, cross margin benefit, exchange transaction charges, and the overall expense structure of the instrument itself, it definitely needs to have a better volume. I totally agree with you. But I think now we have a base of 32 lakh investors. Probably once we do a session after another year or so, probably we'll be at least better in those 4 or 5 top ETFs.
Sir, my question is market participant concept. It is not about the volume. It is not about the number of investors. It is not about that how much fees or the margins they get. The market participants should remain present. They should not simply offer one unit for sale and one unit for purchase. There has to be some depth. You look at the entire basket, and then I'm sure you will be able to understand your own problem. Even if you are a long-term investor, you cannot sell in this kind of offerings from the market.
Mr. Kaj, we've noted your point, and Mr. Kapoor has tried to give you the answer. However, we've noted your feedback, and we should be working on that.
I think that is Mr. Anil Jain. He's a very, very well-informed person, I must say. And I think what he's trying to say is that in market making, you cannot have a market maker just offering one unit, right? So if it is only one unit, after some time nobody will trade, and maybe can request.
Yes, that is correct, Vijay. Thank you.
Vijay, I would like to add something here. See, being having the ETF, so most of our ETFs, if you see, they have highest volumes, and almost 76% of the volume share on the exchange is with our ETF. We generally do not face this kind of thing, volume problem. But one thing I would like to add here is, see, market maker as an entity is still not recognized in India. Okay, globally, if you see, in most of the developed countries, there are guidelines and regulations governing the market makers, which in India is still not there. So what we've done is, at mutual fund level, via representing through various committees, we suggested to the regulator as well that there should be clear-cut market making guidelines and market making regulations, wherein a market maker should be recognized as a market maker. And once that recognition is there, then the market maker should be providing quotes within certain levels, within certain bands, etc. Basically, the regulations which have been created for them. So that work is already on, and we hope to see that maybe regulator may have come up with something or other now or in the near future.
I think it's a very important thing. And let me tell you, as ANMI president, we had raised this with the ministry. And in turn, then SEBI asked us for our comments. What do you want? By the way, there is already some guidelines for market makers that exist. They're already there. Only thing is that they were made many years ago. And perhaps if you, as an industry, come up
I think we've lost the connection of Mr. Vijay Bhushan. Yeah, you were saying something. I think you're back. Mr. Vijay Bhushan, kindly unmute yourself. We lost the last part of your
No, I'm saying
remarks.
that even the government or rather, even SEBI is interested in having market making guidelines which they can amend. There was some guidelines issued many years back, and I think BSC tried to promote that concept at one point of time, but then it never really went through. But I think this is something which can be done and which is really required. That apart from what a market maker is, what are his duties, and also maker is also this whole question of whether he has inside information. So we have to. So it's a tightrope walking there. But I think if the industry
So we are losing your connection, I guess, Mr. Vijay Bhushan, yet again. I'll just quickly go to the next question. Mr. Sunil Arora asks, how does a ETF fund deal with open offer from its constituent stocks?
How does a ETF fund deal with open offer from its constituent source? So at our end, what we do is we have to follow whatever methodology or is being implemented into the index. And so I believe maybe Gaurav can answer this question on what exactly they do as part of the open offers, etc.
See, largely what happens is it depends upon how the index the constituent has any change in the index, and that is being recalibrated every 6 months. And if the index gets changed in any percentage, then the ETF provider, the mutual fund, needs to recalibrate and change those stocks in that same proportion.
Okay. So the last question, which seems to be for the evening, is I think it must have been answered, but yet at the cost of repetition, from Pankaj Vashne, how does a retail investor buy and sell ETFs?
Yeah, sure. So, given that ETFs are listed on the stock exchange, you can buy and sell ETFs like any other stock. The lot size for buying and selling is 1 unit, and you can buy it on the stock exchange. You will have to pay a brokerage to buy or sell the ETF. But on the STT side, the STT is almost nil or negligible. So that's how it is.
Okay. So I have a question yet again from Mr. Sunil Arora. He says, my question was whether you participate in open offers. So I don't think he seems to have got his answer. So he puts in the question once again in the chat. Would you like to attempt it, Mr. Bhatia, again?
See, as I told you, we have to follow the index, and on the open offer side, I don't remember. I'll have to check with the team internally, but I don't think so. We participate in open offers. Okay, open offer is it is a subjective thing based on which a price call is to be taken. And being on the passive side, I don't think so. The passive funds take any sort of price calls of whether to participate or not to participate in a open offer, depending on the price, open offer price given by the promoter.
Okay. Okay.
But yes, what happens is tomorrow, because of the open offer, if the free float changes, okay, if the free float of the stock changes because of the open offer, that free float will lead to changes in the index constituent. The weightages will change, because of which there will be a change in the index constituents, the weightage of those constituents, and we as a fund house, our scheme will mimic those changes in the underlying constituents because of the change in free float because of the open offer which the promoter would have done.
So your session seems to be a hit, Mr. Bhatia. So we have yet another question. My apologies for calling the last one as the last one.
No worries.
And I think we must take it since the attendees have stayed that long and are wanting to know some little more. How are dividends accounted for? Do you purchase additional shares?
Yeah, sure. So what happens is the dividends which we'll receive from the underlying constituents, we endeavor to redeploy those dividends into the ETF basket which we are tracking.
Okay, sounds very interesting. And we haven't heard anything from Mr. Brijesh Sharma. Sir, can we have some few words from you?
Yeah, I think we had a brilliant session. I think with all those eminent speakers, and I mean, like you mentioned, I think this is one such session where we initially thought that it is a subject may not be of a great interest to a lot of our, people who are there in the call. But then to my surprise, I think this is really coming out to be one of the greatest sessions, especially on ETF as a subject, which people still feel it's a new subject in the market. People have been investing for last 25 years, rather for many more years, maybe 50 years in mutual funds as an investment option. But then, and through the traditional ways of, I think, investing, India, is one of the biggest in terms of household savings. But the paradigm, I think, which is happening in the market for some time now, at least for 4 or 5 years, like Gaurav mentioned, I think 2014 when we did the first CPSE, we ourselves were not very clear. And Himain and Samir and Vishal, I think we had so many sessions in terms of what a ETF is and how things really, they happen on the stock exchange and all. Since then, I think we've come across a long way. In fact, 2014, Himain was the year when this acquisition also happened.
So it happened in 2016.
So I think we were the first company who really thought ahead of times in those years and gone about doing this acquisition. And since then, I think for all, I mean, internally for everyone in Nippon, I think ETF is not something that we see as which is not core for us. I think both our businesses, whether it is the normal mutual fund schemes and the ETF, both of them had to coexist, and that's how the entire ecosystem is working. I think Mr. Jain was asking that very pertinent questions. I think, and why a lot of other AMCs are not there. And I think that these are businesses which needs a lot of, I think, they need a lot of, I think, stuff from an organization point of view. It's not easy create a setup like this or a team like this. Also, like Gaurav mentioned, the Bharat Bond ETF, I think it spends, I don't think it is even 0.05. I think much lesser than that number. So margins and the revenues obviously is something which, obviously I think cause of concern for a lot of people in the business actually. So, but then you have to be in the right business actually. From an investor point of view, these are investor-centric ideas. That's how we are really engaging with all our clients, and we are getting Mr. Sehgal, we are getting phenomenal response in the market when we go talk to especially ultra HNIs or the HNIs and the family offices. I had entire North India and not just Delhi, Mr. Bhushan, but even the upcountry market. A lot of You have big clients across, you go to Lucknow, all these cities actually. So the interest is building up, and like I think the name of a program suggests it's a paradigm. So it's actually like that. And I'm really thankful to Mr. Bhuchan once again and my friends from Bombay and Gaurav for a great session today. So that's all from my side. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity.
No, it's been a sheer pleasure, I must say. And I think with the participation touching about 97 at that point of time, which when
Last count was 99. I took a picture of 99.
Acha, you did?
That's 100.
Okay.
So we had crossed 100, by the way.
Yeah, Acha, Mr. Bhushan
I
had
saw
a
that.
close
Yeah.
eye on the number of participants actually.
So a lot of them actually left because they got a lot of their answers,
Yeah.
and it was pretty informative. And
I'll tell you, sir, and sorry I'm interrupting you, but full year now, yesterday was the day one of Janata Curfew. I mean, of I think 1 full year of Janata Curfew. People are loaded with all the webinars. I was myself very skeptical when sir had asked me to arrange a session like this. In fact, all of us were skeptical of number of attendees. We are surprised because people are really loaded with a lot of webinars. There are 42 AMCs. There are a lot of other intermediaries in the market. We keep having these sessions. So obviously, but then this is like still around 40, 50 people is really, I think this product has a great future, for sure. Yeah.
yes, definitely.
Definitely, Bridges.
Definitely. And I'm sure actually you took the words right out of my mouth. It's not that too many people want to really attend webinars anymore, but I guess the topic is so interesting. I think these panelists were so great that I think it attracted a lot of people not only to come in, but join and, hear and then also ask questions. So I'm sure things will look much more brighter in the future. Frankly speaking, I must tell you, I'm not a capital markets guy per se, but as a layman, a person who has funds sitting in fixed deposits really doesn't know how and where to invest. And believe me, there are tons and tons of people out there who need to be educated, who need to be told, who need to be convinced, and who need to understand these kind of products. And not one session, but I think many more such sessions across the board will, of course, help all of us. So any last word from our chair before I give a vote of thanks to our brilliant panelists? Mr. Vijay Bhushan, over to you.
Well, I think
please.
I need to thank all our panelists. I really liked, I must tell you, that Virat Swarup comparison with the Virat Swarup, comparison with, bringing the entire, the entire mountain rather than the Sanjeevani Booty. I think very, very pertinent ways. First time I heard that though.
Thank you, sir.
And I really must also thank Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, who had a very short time. And my God, how much material he had. I'm really, I was really surprised because he was, we talked to him very late, and yet he did all the, what a brilliant presentation by him. In fact, I think he could have gone on for further time. And I was just thinking that, whether people will keep on listening because, we had said 6:30 is our closing time. I also like I must thank the participants who are there. I think still people are coming back and look at the question, Nat, how do we invest in ETFs? There was one question which I answered of one of our, chair of another committee. He says, what do you mean by an ETF? So I gave him an answer right from my phone only. So I think, this, and I know that gentleman quite well. He is invested in share markets, and yet he doesn't know what is an ETF. So, of course, the effort has to be made. The efforts have been made in the past. But I think, especially on the trading side, on the market making side, very, very relevant question. I think, the mutual funds as a industry must also look into this, because till they create, a set of good market makers, these products, will have limited shelf life. It's another thing that EPFO always has to buy because they have the funds flowing in. But I think the opportunity is much larger than that. And in fact, the tracking error rate question was mine, which I thought. I said, like, you should also track not just the performance per se, but performance intraday of the market maker. So, but then I think this is an important issue. And I think even now, because government is themselves involved in the ETFs by their own PSU shares, they are open to far many more suggestions now. So I think we can we would be, as PhD, very happy to take it forward should the industry have certain issues. I'm sure we will get a good hearing both at the level of SEBI as well as the ministry. So, and in any case, thank you all of you for being part of this. I think, let me also tell you that Nippon Mutual Fund is the first mutual fund, at least I know of, for the last 3 years of capital and commodity markets to have made an entry in PhD. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair, for those reassuring words. And I must, before I start my formal vote of thanks, definitely also mention the intricate, presentation, and one of the slides being very, very intricate, which was apparently, I think, made by Mr. Hemant Bhatia. I mean, I think there were so many constituents to it, with all those colors and how the blacks went up and down. I think just making that presentation, making that effort, and I think must have definitely helped not only the viewers but also convince them of how much of work goes behind these webinars. So with my formal vote of thanks, which I must do as not only a matter of protocol but also to express our gratitude towards our panelists. I'd like to thank Mr. Hemant Bhatia, Deputy Head ETF Business, Nippon Life India, Mr. Sameer Desai, National Lead ETF Sales, Nippon Life India, Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, VP and Head North, NSE Limited, Mr. Brijesh Sharma, Zonal Head. Thank you very much for contributing to it. It's been really pleasure having all of you here this evening. And I'd like to thank Nippon India Mutual Fund, our sponsor for this webinar, and the delegates for their valuable contribution and their excellent questions, I must say. Now, ETFs are excellent investment options, as we learned over the evening, for passive investors. I could count myself in going forward. Hopefully, I'll take help from Mr. Brajesh's office, who want to beat inflation and get returns over a long investment horizon. Actively managed funds will continue to form the major part of investment portfolios with increasing share of wallet on ETFs. Though the universe of ETF is confined with limited flows into some particular categories, but with an increase in the participation of retail investors, the industry is likely to come up with more product variants, and more categories are likely to gain investors' favor. I hope the investors got the awareness about ETFs from today's webinar so that they can take informed investment decisions from now. Thank you so much for being here this evening. It's been a great session. Look forward to many more such knowledge sessions which keep coming through the initiatives of our chair, Mr. Vijay Bhushan. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here. Namaskar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.